Ms. Dancho for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Minister, for being here. There are 48 days until President Trump is inaugurated on January 20th. So in the next 6 weeks, how many more additional RCMP officers will be redeployed to the border to patrol between ports of entry by January 20th, sir?
Ms. Dancho, thank you for the question. The government has been working with the RCMP and CBSA in particular on how we can increase both the redeployment of officers and acquire new technology and equipment. We will have announcements to make in the coming weeks, recognizing that January 20th is obviously an important moment. I've seen the Commissioner's comments publicly, and he's talked to me about the ongoing redeployment the RCMP and CBSA make dependent on threat assessment. But that, I can assure you, that work is ongoing, and the details will be some of it's operational police planning. I would leave to the Commissioner,
Minister.
But happy to talk publicly about it.
May I just ask again, but the numbers, how many additional, what is the redeployment numbers for the border? Because you've made it quite clear, sir, that between ports of entry is RCMP jurisdiction. How many will be redeployed? But
again, Ms. Dancho, a very good question. We haven't made, as a government, I think, those final decisions. We're working based on the advice from the CBSA and the RCMP, of course. And I look to the Commissioner or the President if they're in a position to say precisely how many officers at what particular sector or what border crossing. Some of this might, in fact, be operational information.
That actually, we just spoke about it. It doesn't seem that there's been any conversations thus far about redeploying specific resources to the border between ports of entry right now, only if there's perhaps a surge from the United States into Canada. Because, of course, we know the Americans have an issue with what's coming from Canada into the United States. So thus far, there is no number available or really a plan, from what we understand, to redeploy RCMP resources. There's also not a plan to increase border agents either. So is there a number in your mind of what the plan is to increase border agents' boots on the ground by the 20th? What is the number that you're looking to increase it?
Again, I've said publicly, and we reassured our American friends at the dinner Friday evening in Palm Beach, that we will be increasing those numbers. I have received some advice from the Border Services Agency and the RCMP. I'm working with the Minister of Finance, and we'll be happy to announce the details in as much as is possible when they're finalized.
Thank you, Minister. But again, you've been talking about a plan, but there doesn't seem to be any concrete meetings that are happening to increase or to redeploy right now between the borders. I think that is an area of concern because you've said yourself you're not interested in expanding. It's not a priority to expand the CBSA mandate. And I'm sure you saw the communications from the union president there that it's so frustrating as a border agent to see these individuals crossing and that's not in their jurisdiction. So will you be expanding the CBSA mandate to beyond the port, to in between the port of entry, given these dynamics?
So again, Ms. Dancho, you've asked two questions. The first one is there haven't been any meetings to discuss redeployment. I had an opportunity yesterday with the President of CBSA and the Commissioner of the RCMP and our Deputy Minister to discuss potential options in this regard. So those meetings have been ongoing as recently as this time yesterday. Don't want to correct you. You said I have said that we're not interested in expanding the CBSA mandate. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. What I have said is we're interested in taking immediate steps that will reassure Canadians and the Americans that the border remains secure and the integrity of the border is protected. But we're always interested. We've taken notes of the union president's comments. The Commissioner and I have talked about this issue in the past.
Yes,
we haven't made any decisions in that regard, but are open to considering that as well.
Thank you. But what is the immediate step on the redeployment numbers? You can't tell me the numbers of how many you're going to redeploy. The Commissioner also is not aware of any plan in that regard, and the CBSA President also has not heard any asks from you to increase the boots on the ground. So it doesn't seem that there is immediate action forthcoming on this. And again, it's 48 days away, and we're facing down the barrel of a 25% tariff and economic recession. And there isn't a concrete plan here that I'm hearing from you about actual boots on the ground to address the concerns of the Americans. Again, so there's no number right now for the redeployment between ports of entry, whether from RCMP or from the CBSA.
Again, Ms. Dancho, I wouldn't imagine you'd want to put words in the mouth of the Commissioner or the President of CBSA. I had asked them probably a month and a half or 2 months ago, and a number of times since, obviously, the election of President Trump. As you noted, the initial concern was about a potential south to north flow of people arriving at the border. That was the conversation that captivated Canadians a few weeks ago. You've seen, in light of the President's comments a week ago, that's changed as well, issues around fentanyl. I have received advice from the Commissioner of the RCMP and the President of CBSA in terms of additional resources, including human resources, including personnel, that we could recruit, hire, and redeploy, as well as equipment. And as I said, I'm working with the Minister of Finance, and we'll be happy to tell Canadians about this important work when it's finalized.
It is a concern we've heard about for 20 days now from the borders for President Trump that this is going to be a problem. But there's no commitment that you're making today or in the past week, and certainly since your trip to Mar-a-Lago, to have additional resources.
I've just made that commitment.
How many, though?
But again, I told you, we're repeating ourselves. It's a circular argument. I've said that when we have finalized, there will be additional resources, human and equipment. We've said that consistently.
By January 20th?
And we will be making announcements in terms of procurement and personnel before that date. We are finalizing that as a government now, based on the advice that we received, the good advice from the RCMP and from the Border Services Agency. I understand it's exciting, and Canadians want to understand this. The good news is it's coming.
Thank you, Ms. Dancho.
Thank you.
Your time is up.
Thank you,
With Ms. Dancho for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, the priority, it seems, in addressing the 25% tariff threat from President-elect Trump is addressing what's happening in between the ports of entry right now. You're nodding, so I see you would agree? You nodded when I said that.
No, of course that's a priority, but it's also a priority at the ports of entry. I see these as equal priorities. We take the operational advice of the RCMP and CSIS in terms of where the particular threat is.
Thank you. It is a priority, though, between the ports of entry, and we're not getting clear commitments from you for the redeployment of RCMP resources or increased boots on the ground. In fact, to Ms. Michaud, when she said that we don't have enough CBSA agents, you said that you didn't agree with her in that regard. So is your opinion that we do, in fact, have enough CBSA agents? So from that, I can defer that there won't be an increase in CBSA agent boots on the ground. And certainly, as you know, our leader, Pierre Poilievre, is committed to working with provincial law enforcement as well to redeputize some of those individuals to secure the in between the ports of entry at the border and to expand the CBSA mandate to work between the ports as well. So again, we are committed to increasing those boots on the ground, but I'm not hearing that commitment from you, in particular in your response to Ms. Michaud. So there is no commitment to increase boots on the ground at this time. It's certainly not before January 20th, from what you've said.
Yeah, again, just because you repeat it 4 or 5 times, Ms. Dancho, doesn't make it true. I also said to Madame Michaud that we were absolutely committed to increasing the personnel of the CBSA and the RCMP. We have made considerable steps in that regard to reverse the cuts that your previous Conservative government had made, but we also recognize we can do more, and we'll do more as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Minister. I'm glad that you brought the cuts up, because I was reviewing all the annual reports back to the Martin years, if you'd believe it. And it would seem that just based on the annual report data itself, that in fact during the Harper years of 10 years, there was an increase of 1,700 positions at the CBSA during his 10-year mandate, and $500 million of increased investments to the CBSA at that point. And in fact, based on the annual report data, in the last year, we ensured that there were 336 additional frontline workers. We were looking at that same time, as you know, to balance the books. Harper eliminated the deficit at that time, and we had a 26% decrease in violent crime, contrasting that with your government's record, Minister, of course, a 50% increase in violent crime and the largest debt accumulation in history. Actually, all governments combined before you don't match the debt that your government has accrued. So it is interesting. And in fact, in the first 2 years of the mandate of your government at CBSA, you cut 237 frontline border boots on the ground positions and another 450 in 2020 to 2021. And in fact, you reduced in 2017 the jobs at CBSA back to 2008 levels. So it is interesting that given the balancing of the budget, reducing of crime under Harper government, we're seeing just quite the opposite from yours. And I'll certainly defend the Harper record 7 days a week in that regard. And I do appreciate that you feel confident that you're bringing forward a plan. We haven't heard any commitment on the numbers. And of course, you weren't invited to Mar-a-Lago because you were doing a good job on the border. In fact, quite the opposite, correct? So we are having serious issues at the border, and we're not getting a sense from you that you're ensuring redeployment of RCMP immediately to secure the border, or that you're increasing agents on the ground at CBSA or working with CBSA to expand their mandate. So again, not clear what your plan is. You've talked about technology, fair enough, we agree in that regard, but you've provided no concrete commitments. And so really for the Americans, they're not seeing anything coming before January 20th to this point. And I find that concerning given we're staring down the barrel of a 25% tariff economic recession by January 20th. So again, I may be obsessed with talking about numbers and boots on the ground, but you have made no commitment on that, and that is the issue that the Americans are threatening us with. So I'll just ask you again, boots on the ground, increase from RCMP to CBSA in between ports of entry, yes or no?
Dancho, what is equally unclear is the infomercial you just did for social media. You talked about Mr. Harper eliminating his own deficit, having inherited a massive surplus from Ralph Goodale. You talked about increasing the CBSA numbers of staff. That's a good thing. The CBSA was born in 2003 after 9/11, so it's not surprising if Mr. Harper became Prime Minister in 2006 and 7 and 8. The CBSA was ramping up the good work that they're doing. So we certainly are glad that Mr. Harper in those early years did that. It's too bad at the end of his government he decided to cut it. And again, Ms. Dancho, you keep repeating that. I hope you get a good clip. But I have said publicly, I said it at Mar-a-Lago, the Prime Minister repeated it, that of course we will be increasing the boots on the ground, to use your phrase, of the CBSA and the RCMP. And I want to be careful. You said that the RCMP have not redeployed resources or have not assigned new people. I have a lot of confidence in the decision that the Commissioner of the RCMP or the President of the CBSA will make on reassigning the appropriate police or law enforcement presence based on the threat that exists. And I've been assured by the Commissioner and the President that they absolutely are operationally ready to meet a potential threat. But the good news is we're going to work with them to ensure they have even more human resources. So there's the specific answer to your question. The answer was yes. We are going to increase the human resources, but we're also going to use technologies which can be very effective as well.
Thank you very much. And just in my accumulating seconds, I have full
Thank you, Ms.
confidence.
Dancho.
I have 15 seconds
No,
left.
we're actually
yes,
over by
I do,
45
based on
seconds.
point of order. When the mic went live, I have 15 seconds remaining, so if you'll just allow me, and then the
We're
minister
over.
can finish.
We're over
No,
by a minute.
It's 6 minutes. Oh, 5
It's
minutes.
5
You're
minutes.
right. My apologies. Thank you to the Commissioner and to the President. I do have full faith in you. It's your leadership, Minister, that I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you. Madame Michaud, pour 6 minutes.
Inaudible for the interpreter. I had the opportunity to question you following the election of President Trump. Following the election, at the committee meeting, I was concerned by some of the statements made by Mr. Trump concerning the deportation of millions of migrants who might try to come to Canada. And I asked about the safety or security at the borders. And at the time, you said everything was okay, you had a plan, there was no need to do anything. If there was a crisis, you would manage it at the time. That was your answer. And then last week, you said, with all that Mr. Trump is announcing, there's the threat of a 25% tariff. We need to invest more at the border. We need more human resources, more air resources, more drones, helicopters, and so on. And it showed that you were not that ready. That's what I understand. I understand why you want to increase staff levels at the border, because Radio Canada recently said that there may be 6 employees per shift to cover about 600 kilometers of our U.S.-Canada border. So that's all good. We understand that the RCMP has the mandate to cover the border crossings. But conversely, as I asked the Commissioner a while ago, the decision to redeploy employees, to send more RCMP agents to the border, this definitely has an impact on other departments and on other battles that have to do with public safety. And the president of the union, Mark Webber, said his members have the expertise to patrol between border posts, and they would like to do so. But considering the Immigration Act, the Customs Act, and the Refugee Protection Act, there's nothing that prevents border service agents to do so, but rather it's an order that prevents them from doing so, an order that dates back to 1932. And that is what Mr. Mark Webber said in a letter that was sent to you yesterday. And according to your statements earlier, it doesn't seem to be a priority for you to broaden the mandate of CBSA to allow them to support the RCMP. Why, in this situation where we would think that the security level at the border is a priority, why not allow the RCMP employees who have the necessary expertise to go patrol at the borders? Ms. Michaud, thank you for the 25 questions that you've just asked. You said that when we met following the elections, I remember that I was confident that where there was increased migration from the south to the north, we will be ready. The RCMP, the CBSA will be ready. That remains my opinion. It hasn't changed. But you are right. The comments made by Mr. Trump 1 week ago, particularly at that time, the challenge was a fight against fentanyl and the concern of the USA, and that's something we discussed in Mar-a-Lago Tuesday evening. Their concern is people trying to go from the north to the south to enter the United States going through Canada. We needed to reassure them and reassure Canadians that we are able to reduce those figures and we are leaders when it comes to fighting fentanyl. I think that situation has not changed. At the end, you came up with another very interesting question, the mandate of the border service agents compared to the RCMP. I totally agree with you. One of the challenges is that if Commissioner Johan and his commander in Quebec, for example, are facing an emergency or an operational situation that requires a redeployment of police officers, of course, they have to be removed from other investigations. That situation is not ideal, but that is what we've done for decades to manage a threat. That is why we will be increasing. Well, the commissioner has already made a lot of progress. We'll be increasing the number of recruits at Regina. The trend is favorable, but it's not going to be done overnight. So I find the idea interesting that we look at the mandate of CBSA. I have had informal discussions with the president and the commissioner, and that was a few months ago, long before the American elections. Is it what we desire? Well, I visited Rigaud, the college for CBSA agents, and training is going on very well. It's not overnight that we can recruit hundreds of border agents. I understand that we don't have enough agents at the CBSA. That's not what I said. Is that what explains a reduction in service hours at the border post because you want to redeploy agents to more busy entry points? Is that the problem because there's a lack of resources at the CBSA? Is that why you are turning to the RCMP to safeguard our borders? The RCMP is already doing great work to safeguard our borders in partnership with the CBSA. They work together. I don't agree with you that we don't have enough CBSA agents. I was an opposition MP before. I understand how you are asking your questions. It's something you do very well. However, you are right. Now, talking about harmonization of hours at some entry points, I understand that the president responded while I was the Council of Ministers. I think he responded to you at the House. The objective was to be in alignment with our American partners, the border controls there. These discussions have been underway for months and years. We think that this would enhance security because if Americans unilaterally close their side of the border during some hours, if somebody crosses over, according to the Safe Third Country Agreement, they could arrest someone and have that person returned to the U.S. But if there's no one on the other side, they will be taken to a police post in Quebec, in a small village Well, that cannot be done. So that was one way of improving security. But these discussions have been underway with the CBSA, with their American partners, and they have reassured me that this represents a reduction in some hours in some areas at the border.